This is your First Alert Weather Breakdown, a deep dive into how weather works with meteorologist CJ Cartledge.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm First Alert Meteorologist CJ Cartledge here. Welcome on to the first weather breakdown of this work week. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day so far. I hope you guys had to go to your morning commutes pretty smoothly this morning. I did not see many backups or accidents at all as we move throughout the morning hours, but I hope you guys made it to work safely or wherever you need to be on this Monday morning safely. Today, we have some good topic for you guys here. It's pretty much what is feels like temperatures here. We're also going to be talking about the hot and humid forecast for today. We're also going to be talking about the feels like temperatures, and or another word for it is heat index or apparent temperatures. We have quite a few nicknames for what we're going to be talking about today here on the KSLA First Alert Weather Breakdown. So it's definitely going to be an interesting topic. Make sure to stay tuned throughout the podcast or throughout today's episode to learn more about what is a heat index and what it means and why we use it in our forecast for you guys here. So let's take a quick look outside, jump right into the forecast here. This is our KSLA tower camera overlooking downtown Shreveport as well as overlooking the Red River, and we are seeing mostly blue skies out there across the Arklatex right now, and we should see a little bit more cloud cover as we move through the daytime hours, but not much. It's supposed to be very similar to what we're seeing right now. You may also see a little bit of some haze in the background. That is actually due to Saharan dust out in the that has actually made its way across the Atlantic Oceans and reached us here in the Arklatex here. And I'm going to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here with this graphic. As you can see here, I'm just going to slow this time lapse down a little bit, and I'm going to move myself off the screen. As you can see, there are multiple large plumes of Saharan dust over in the western portions of Africa, and they're making their way through the Atlantic Oceans and into the Arklatex region. And right now, there is a plume of Saharan dust making its way towards the Gulf Coast states, mainly entering into the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, and moving into the Gulf Coast states as of right now. And that's going to be the reason for why we will see that haze during sunsets, and as well as looking out into the horizon throughout the day today and throughout our Tuesday as well. This may not be out of the area until we hit the middle to late part of our work week coming up, but that is just something, just a piece of information for you guys to just describe the hazy and milky looking conditions in the sky. But here's a look at our forecast headlines as we move into the new work week, actually, for today. Hot and humid saga is expected to continue on through the rest of this week, but we may receive a slight relief from the heat and humidity, as mentioned all throughout the morning show that I've been talking about here, mainly because of rain possible through the overnight hours for tonight and into our afternoon on Tuesday, as well as Wednesday and Thursday before rain chances start to drop. The heat and humidity is expected to increase once again by the time we hit the end of the week, which is 4th of July on Friday, and heading into this weekend where temperatures are expected to increase as well. Here's a look at First Alert Doppler radar. Nothing much is really going on around the Arklatex as of right now, other than the Saharan dust slowly making its way northward into the Arklatex from the Gulf. And we should see nothing much really go on through the day today, except for the isolated showers that will be possible in the southern half of the Arklatex by later on this afternoon. Temperatures right now have warmed up into the 80s across the entire Arklatex. As you can see, 86 for Shreveport and Bossier, 86 also for Mansfield, 87 near Natchitoches, 84 near Florine, just right behind my screen there, 88 for Texarkana. Already almost hitting the 90s as of 10:34 here. 82 for DeQueen, 84 near Idabel in our northeastern Texas portions of the region near Mount Pleasant and Longview, 85 over there by Marshall. But in terms of feels like temperatures, we are feeling like the lower 90s across most portions around the region as well. Also at this hour, it feels like 104, toasty 104 near Bienville. Actually, I'm going to take a quick look at what the feels like, or the actual temperature is near Bienville right now. It's 88 degrees, and it feels like 104 out there as of right now. Their sensor is more than likely closer to a heat source, or more than likely closer to a source that is promoting that high temperature and feels like temperature, as it is normally higher than most areas or most sensors that we have here on the screen that sense temperature and other weather parameters here. But that is definitely something to take into consideration, take great caution with. There's definitely some high humidity over there in Bienville, as well as portions of East Texas. We're feeling like the more than 10 degrees or more than 5 degrees higher than those actual temperatures. Definitely some high humidity out and about the Arklatex right now. It feels like 93 near Shreveport. Feels like 90 near Minden. 95 for Mansfield. Feels like 98 near Nacogdoches as of right now. It feels like 92 up there near Idabel currently. But in terms of highs for today, we should see the low to mid 90s across the region here. I'm going to move myself off the screen once again. 95 for Natchitoches, 95 also for Mansfield, 96 near Shreveport. Looks to be up to 98 potentially near Henderson, or not Henderson, but near Texarkana, but it looks to be also up to 98 near Henderson, Texas as well. 95 also for areas along the east side of I-20, or 94 potentially near Minden in terms of highs for today. But in terms of feels like temperatures or heat indexes, which we'll go into detail about a little bit in just a little bit, we should remain below that heat advisory criteria, which is why we're not under any types of heat advisories or heat warnings in general for today. 101 looks to be the forecast. It feels like high near Center, Mansfield, and Hemphill. Around 102 for Ruston and Natchitoches. 103 potentially near Shreveport and Marshall. And Texarkana has seen the higher end of the stick in terms of the high temperatures as compared to everywhere else around the Arklatex throughout this past week so far, or not so far, but throughout the past week and weekend actually. There feels like high will be at around 106. But in terms of the feels like temperatures mixed in with those actual temperatures, this creates a parameter called the heat risk potential. And it shows that we could see a great deal of heat and humidity through the day today, but that may decrease as we move into Tuesday as well as Wednesday. That's mainly because of a cold front that will be moving in from the north and west. From up here in Oklahoma, it will be actually pushing through our northern portions of the region, north of the I-30 corridor. And this could possibly bring the chance for severe weather, which we will talk about in just a little bit here after we get through the heat and humidity part of the forecast here. But we should see slightly cooler conditions for the northern half of the Arklatex heading into Tuesday and Wednesday, mainly due to higher rain chances during the overnight hours tonight into early tomorrow morning, as well as the cooler air ready to set in those areas as well heading into Tuesday and Wednesday. But the highs are expected to drop as well for the northern half of the region to the upper 80s and lower 90s. But as we move into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we could watch that heat and humidity return back into the Arklatex. This is on our July 4th holiday, 4th of July. And as you can see, we don't see many reds, but we still see those orange colors there around the Arklatex pretty much scattered. And as we move into the weekend, those oranges turn into reds pretty much. We're definitely going to see some high heat and humidity across the Arklatex. The humidity is actually going to be a tad bit lower than what is expected to be for our Tuesday and Wednesday, but the temperatures will definitely be up there, possibly approaching the triple digits in some portions around the region. We're expecting very similar conditions as we move into our Sunday as well. For our forecasted highs, as you can see, for Saturday, possibly getting up to 98 degrees in terms of highs for Shreveport and Bossier, and most of the area should reach the mid and upper 90s as well. But as we move towards our Tuesday and Wednesday, we could see some slightly cooler conditions, which is why I said before that we may see some slight relief from the heat and humidity before it starts to rise by the end of the week into our weekend here. But in terms of feels like temperatures for the next 5 days ahead, we could see a rise in those feels like temperatures. And at the most, we may see the lower triple digits out there. Maybe near Texarkana may escape into the mid triple digits, just getting close to that heat advisory criteria. But most of the Arklatex could see the heat advisory criteria or break it as we move towards the end of the week and into the weekend, which gives us a higher chance to see more heat advisories be issued heading into the weekend as well. It looks to be pretty likely, as if the forecast holds true, we may go under a heat advisory on 4th of July, as well as Saturday and Sunday of this upcoming weekend. As you can see with Future Track, We won't be going through much going through the daytime hours, but as we move towards the afternoon, we could see an isolated shower or two. This is a new model run that just came in actually during the late evening hours. During or closer towards midnight, we should see showers and storms move in from the north and west here, affecting the showers and storms actually affecting areas north of the I-30 corridor, but they may possibly dissipate by the time we reaches the I-30 corridor or just areas south of there. And that rush of cool air looks to continue to make its way down to the south and east. That is the cold front part of the air, and that's cooler air waiting to set into the region here. As we move into early Tuesday morning, we may still see an isolated shower or two out and about around the region, but we should remain mostly dry through the daytime hours until we hit the afternoon or middle of the afternoon, where we could see an isolated shower or two once again. As we head towards the overnight hours on Tuesday, heading into Wednesday, we should remain mostly dry, back into that same pattern with highs back into the low to mid 90s, upper 80s, though. We should see cooler conditions heading into Wednesday, relatively cooler conditions, not as cool as what I may be talking about, or as how I may sound, as I should say. But it should be relatively cooler conditions, still hot and humid, but it should be a slight relief from the high heat and humidity that we've been dealing with throughout the past week and throughout the past couple of weeks, actually, here in the Arklatex. As you can see, with the severe risk, this lasts from the late evening hours into early morning on Tuesday. And what the model runs were showing this morning was that it was going to move through early morning on Tuesday, but the timing seems to be a little bit earlier now as of the latest model run. So late afternoon, around midnight to the early morning hours of Tuesday, we have a marginal risk of severe weather for the areas north, everywhere north of Texarkana, pretty much, along a line east and west of Texarkana, everywhere north of that line is under a marginal risk of severe weather, mainly highlighting the damaging wind threat associated with these storms. You could definitely still see some lightning, but gusty to damaging winds are definitely possible associated with the storms that will be moving through. And that's typical because it's going to be associated with a cold front. So now looking at the tropics, there is an area that the National Hurricane Center is watching for potential development into a tropical storm. Right now, it doesn't sit at a great chance of potential development here and hasn't been updated since this morning, though. Now I'm actually going to check real fast on the National Hurricane Center to see if it changed here. And it has not changed. So it still sits at a 20% chance of development within the next 7 days and a 0% chance within the next 2 days ahead. But there is still a chance, so we will continue to watch that very, very closely. And there's also the tropical storm that developed just yesterday. It was Barry. It is now in the pretty much in the coastlines of Mexico right now. It's those are the remnants of our second named storm of this year's hurricane season. That has no chance of forming again. But that was pretty much the second short-lived storm of this year's hurricane season. It's pretty consistent. The storms are pretty consistent with being short-lived. But if that area of potential development produces a tropical storm, the next name on the list that it will receive will be Chantal, for the third named storm of this year's hurricane season. But moving on to our 7-day forecast here, we're going to be going through more heat and humidity through the next couple of days ahead, or at least the next 7 days, as you can see here, with slight rain chances for our Monday afternoon. Well, we have a higher chance for rain for the morning as well as the afternoon hours on our Tuesday. Slight rain chances look to return during the afternoon hours, of course, for Wednesday and Thursday, with slightly cooler conditions for Wednesday. But as we move through the rest of the week after Wednesday, we should see those temperatures rise, and the humidity looks to pretty much remain the same, borderline sticky and oppressive out there. 4th of July is looking great out there for those for any plans that you may have on the 4th of July holiday, but this weekend is going to be absolutely brutal in terms of these temperatures and potential feels-like temperatures out there. So coming up after the break, we're going to be diving into more detail about what is heat index, or what is a feels like temperature, and why we use it here at KSLA. It's a pretty good reason why we use it too. So make sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll be back right after these 2 minutes. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. So now we're going to be diving into what is a heat index. A heat index and or an apparent temperature is basically how it feels like outside as compared to the actual temperature, and it is based on a couple of parameters. It is based on the combination of temperature and relative humidity, or it can be based on the combination of temperature and the dew point temperature. Now, the dew point temperature is the temperature at which the air needs to get to, the air temperature needs to be to create condensation or create water vapor. So when the temperature and the dew point temperature are very close to each other, that is what creates moisture in the atmosphere. That's what creates the humidity, and that's what creates rain. Actually, when the dew point temperature and the air temperature is exactly the same here. Now, looking at this heat index chart here, this is pretty much the lineup of the overlaying the temperature and the dew point temperature, and tells you exactly what the feels like temperature would be if those temperatures or and dew point temperatures were to present a situation here in the atmosphere. Now, let's say the temperature is at around 88 degrees. Air temperature, that is, at around Monday at 11 a.m. And that is actually very close to where it is actually right now. But in terms of this situation, if the dew point temperature is in the 70s, around 76 degrees, then the feels like temperature would be at around 99 degrees. And that is because with dew point temperatures, if it is above if it's actually below 50 degrees, dew point temperatures below 50 degrees, then the air would remain dry because it would be more than likely the dew point temperature would be, or at this time of year, let's say at this time of year, okay? The air temperature is at around 88 degrees, right? And if the dew point temperature is farther away from the actual temperature, the air temperature, then that means the air is dry. And that means there's not much water vapor in the atmosphere, and there's not much of a chance for water vapor to form in the atmosphere at that temperature. But if the dew point temperature is more in the 60s, if it was more in the 70s especially, then that would create more than likely it would create some water vapor in the atmosphere, and that would make it feel humid outside, especially temperatures in the 70s. That's a dangerous level, and that's denoting that the atmosphere is definitely holding some water in the atmosphere. Of course, dew point temperatures can't rise to extremely dangerous they can rise to those levels, but it's very rare that dew point temperatures rise to levels like 90 degrees or 100 degrees. So the threshold that it stops at is around 78. It's very rare that you see any dew point temperatures above 80 degrees, but it's definitely possible since we are pretty much a Gulf Coast state, and we are near the water. We are near the water. For those that are nearest to the water, they will have the higher humidity on those hot summer days. But moving on here, just looking at the chart, just looking around here, as you can see, as the dew point temperature decreases and the temperature decreases, so will the feels like temperature. But if the temperature is high and the dew point temperature is low, then the feels like temperature will actually be close to the actual temperature, or the apparent temperature will be very similar to the actual temperature. It won't feel much of a difference. But if the dew point temperature is higher, like in the 70s or higher, then you will see the feels like temperature reach more than 5 degrees higher than the actual temperature or the actual air temperature that is present in the atmosphere here. So just moving through this timeline here, just going into different parts of the daytime hours. Monday at 2 p.m., that shows that if the air temperature is at around 90 degrees, this is at a certain situation. And if the dew point temperature is at around 74, which is a dangerous level, above that 70-degree mark for dew point temperature, then the feels like temperature is around 10 degrees higher than the actual temperature, or the apparent temperature is 10 degrees higher than the actual temperature. Now, if you go to 76 or 78 degrees in terms of dew point temperatures, you'll start to see feels like temperatures more than 10 degrees higher. And that's when you get the high heat and humidity. That's still high heat and humidity out there. High heat in terms of high temperature, and high humidity in terms of high dew point temperature. Now I'm going to show a different example as well. This is pretty similar, but this is overlapping with temperature and relative humidity. Now, relative humidity, that definition is basically it's represented as a percentage, and it's a percentage of water vapor in the atmosphere compared to how much it can hold at a certain temperature. Now, if the relative humidity, let's say, is 40% at 80 degrees, then there's around 40% of its maximum. There's around 40% of water vapor as compared to its maximum capacity at 80 degrees, pretty much. So in terms of if the relative humidity is low, which means there's not much water vapor in the atmosphere, there's not much of a chance for rain, where relative humidity can also be considered as a rain chance. If the relative humidity is 40%, then and the temperature is at 80% or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, then the feels like temperature won't be much of a difference. It won't have much of a difference. It will still be sitting at 80 degrees in terms of feels like temperature. But if you go to a higher relative humidity, which means a higher water content in the atmosphere there, as you can see on the screen, then like 70, if you go to 70 percent relative humidity with 80-degree temperature, then the feels like temperature would be around 83 degrees. Now, if you go to, let's say, 94 and 70% relative humidity, that corresponds to 119 degrees in terms of feels like temperature. This is a likelihood of heat disorders with prolonged exposure and strenuous activity. That's why it's actually, let's go into why we use this. I'm going to explain why I read out the likelihood of heat disorders with prolonged exposure or strenuous activity. It's basically because this is an important consideration. It has important considerations for the human body's comfort. So when pretty much when your body gets hot, it starts to sweat, as you may know. The hotter the temperature, or the higher the temperature is, the higher likelihood you're going to sweat, and the faster amount that you would sweat as well, the higher compared to the higher temperature you are. Now, it's important to drink water outside, because once you lose all the sweat or lose all the water contents in your body, your body cannot control your body temperature. Your body cannot pretty much control your body temperature. Once your body temperature gets out of control, then that increases the likelihood of heat-related disorders like heat stroke or heat exhaustion out there. So it is definitely imperative to try to limit your time outdoors if you can. But if you have to be outdoors, drink plenty of water. That gives your body enough fuel to cool off your body. When you sweat, your body cools off and adjusts and tries to adjust to the temperature that is outside a little bit better. But it can't adjust to the temperature as easily as it wants to if you don't drink enough water, if that makes sense. So going down here, this shows, like, this is a National Weather Service website, as you can see here. But the caution level for heat index is between 80 degrees and 90 degrees. This means that fatigue is possible with prolonged exposure and or physical activity. And once you get to extreme caution, which is between 90 to 103 degrees in terms of feels like temperatures or a heat index, that means a heat stroke is possible, heat cramps, or heat exhaustion is all possible with prolonged exposure or physical activity So if you stay outside for a prolonged period of time, and if you are exercising for a long period of time, then heat stroke is definitely possible within the extreme caution range. Once you get to the danger range, that's when the heat advisory start to be issued. That means heat-related illnesses are definitely possible, and if not likely, for people who spend a prolonged period of time outside, which means heat cramps, heat exhaustion is likely. Heat stroke is possible with the prolonged exposure and or physical activity. Extreme danger is 125 degrees Fahrenheit or higher in terms of feels like temperatures. That means heat stroke is likely, especially if you're going to be outside for a prolonged period of time. It's definitely not advised to stay outside for that long, especially if the feels like temperatures are above 125 degrees. That's extremely rare, of course, but more than likely we will receive something in the danger zone sometime this summer, especially during the later part of the month of July and the early month of August. I said July-August. early month of August, early to pretty much the whole month of August and mid to late part of July is when we start to see more feels like temperatures in that danger zone between 103 and 124. We are seeing some danger zone feels like temperatures as of right now, but they're most likely it's only one or two cities like Texarkana and Henderson, Texas, and Bienville, as you saw before, got up to 104 in terms of their feels like temperature already at 10:30. But we are likely to see the danger zone temperatures or feels like temperatures across most of the Arclitex as we move later on into the summer season here. So that's pretty much it on my talk on heat indexes. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. And if you want us to talk about anything else here on the KSLA First Alert Weather Breakdown, make sure to message us on Facebook at KSLA First Alert Weather Team, or you can send us an email at weatherbreakdown@ksla.com. Make sure to continue to join us weekdays at 10:30 a.m. I will be on the podcast tomorrow as well as Wednesday. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the tropics, and we're going to be talking about why or what's in the tropics right now, if there are any potential areas, if that potential area that I saw before or showed you guys before is still there, or if there are any other potential areas out there in the tropics. We're going to be talking all about that and breaking down the details of why we're not seeing activity and why we are seeing activity out there in the tropics. We're going to be talking about all that tomorrow on the KSA First Alert Weather Breakdown at 10:30 a.m. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll be hopping off here the podcast for today. Make sure to enjoy the rest of your Monday. Stay cool. Make sure to drink plenty of water. Wear light colored clothing or light weighted clothing in general, just to prevent or decrease the likelihood of heat related illnesses out there. Just because we're not under a heat advisory does not mean it's not hot and humid. It is still definitely hot and humid around the Arclitex. Make sure to take care of yourself and have a great rest of your day.